Let's test this one real quick. Perfect. Right then. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Revolution Tier 3 Season 13, Round 9. It is time for another British Grand Prix, but this time run around the reverse layout. It's going to be the first time this tier is going to drive around a reverse track here in Revolution, so it's going to be a brand new experience for everyone. Let's hope it's going to go well. Anyway, we return for round 9 of the season. We're past the halfway point, and Alpha Hype Wall is still our championship leader. Once again has extended his lead out the previous race to what is now 48 points towards Jesus in the Williams. Jesus has moved up to second ahead of both Lennon's and Dark Assassin with a pretty poor run at last week's race at the normal Silver Zone layout. They sit in P3 and P4, a couple of points behind Harry in P5. In the kick shower ahead of Twitch Darius jumped ahead of both Arbon and Wardy. Skinner and Dondage round out the top 10, and Mahmoudev, after his first podium last week, he's jumped up to P12, just ahead of last week's race winner Barney in the McLaren, bringing home the victory in only his second ever appearance in Tier 3. Very impressive stuff, and it has actually earned him a full-time seat at VCarb alongside Wardy. VCarb sitting 8th in the Constructors' Championship, of course. Last week's point did go to McLaren, who moved up to P4 after that, four positions up from their previous position, sitting on 94 points. Behind both Alpine and Kicksauber tied on points at 119, and Alpha Hype Wall scored 115 of those 119, so definitely a one-man team at Alpine, but they both have 119, Alpine and Kicksauber, and only behind the championship leaders, who are Williams at 125. Their league has shrunk to only 6 points now, with their main man Jesus now as the current runner-up in the championship. The already two-time Tier 3 world champion looking for a third title, but he knows he's 48 points behind Alpha Hype Wall. He needs to hope for a miracle and some bad luck for the Alpine driver, who's been in great form over the last few weeks. But we kick off qualifying as per usual, 18 minutes. And a few drivers already starting to go out. Nexus is back. He making his debut this season at his full-time seat in Sauber. So great to have him back. And let's see what he is going to be able to do. Porsche Boy going to win. Well, that would be very impressive, given the fact he's not even racing tonight. So either way, Nexus, he's out on track. a lot with the majority of the drivers. I have a feeling that a lot of the drivers don't really know the track layout too well. Might have done a few laps, but not too much ahead of this race. What can Barney do tonight? I have read that he has done some quick lap times in both time trial and qualifying. Our last week's race winner, can he go for a back-to-back victory? That would be impressive, and that would certainly help VCarb in their fight in both the championship in here as well as the combined Constructors Championship, where they have moved towards the lead, beating the likes of Kick Sauber. VCarb really on a generational run mid-season so far, and looking to extend that, especially with a double podium yesterday in Tier 1, and I think another podium in P4 finish in Tier 2, so they're off to a great start again this week. But McLaren podium, it's not off the cards, because we know that Lennon can be quite quick, but the last few races haven't really gone his way. Let's hope for him that he's going to be able to turn that around. He has been our former, I think, championship leader at some point this season after Melbourne, where I think he finished in a second place. I think he started the season quite well. Let's take a look. Yeah, second place at Melbourne, and then a 7th place at Brazil, and then another podium place at Singapore, where I think he grabbed the championship lead. That was certainly very tight at that point in the standings, which certainly is not the case right now, at least not in the Drivers' Championship, because Alpha Hypol is that much far ahead of everyone else. But Lennons, he is going to start his first flying lap going through Ville, and he invalidates immediately there. This turn has become quite difficult around the reverse layout, because that first kink is flat out, but if you take it just a little bit too wide, you might run out too wide and compress your entry speed into the reverse chicane, which also is very tricky with the curbs on the inside being extremely high with the sausage curbs. So have to keep in mind several factors when driving around in reverse. Harry is the first one to set a lap time on the board. It's 1:26.530. That's going to be the time to beat for now, but I reckon we might be able to see some high 25s potentially, or probably will be closer to a low 26, as Aaron, he goes second fastest. Nexus, he goes to a 27.1, as to which Terry goes quickest with a 26.5, only a few thousandths of a second ahead of the Kick Sauber. He gets beaten quite quickly there by Barney already with a 26.1. So that's what I was talking about. He has been looking quite quick around this track. Last week at the normal layout, and this week at the reverse layout as well, already nearing a 25 potentially. Balabotan P5 in the Aston Martin, last week's pole sitter, surprisingly. Unfortunately couldn't convert it into a race win or a podium. He had to settle for P8 after not sure what happened, but he dropped off I think towards the end of the race, unfortunately. But his first pole position in Revolution. Let's see what he can do around this layout. Currently sitting just behind his teammate for tonight, Aaron, a Tier 5 driver, if I'm not mistaken. Has made a couple of appearances so far this season in Tier 3 as well. Getting some good experience under the belt, but 11 drivers already have set a lap time. A few drivers still out there. Lenz, of course, we saw him invalidate his first run. Not sure if he is on another one. I think he is pushing on to set that lap time as he makes his way through Cobb's corner in reverse. Still flat out, but you have to be mindful of the inside curb and on the grass there on the outside. It's very easy to run out wide, especially during the race when you're in dirty air. Same as the other way around when you have that big runoff on the exit. And Luffield is very tricky as well with the inside curb, can't really touch that. And then on the exit, going on to the Wellington Straight, he might have backed off, but either way, a nice tour around this track. Very tight to the inside there. Want to take a wider approach to this one to get the exit right, because it's going to be flat out towards the finish line. It's not going to be a quick lap for the McLaren driver. So Ozan sets a 1:27.8, puts him in P11, while his teammate Arbon has gone up to 7th place with a low 27. Frobby in P10, but he is close to improving on that time. Close behind Blitz Hyper in the Alpine. Racing once again as well in Tier 3. Let's see if the McLaren driver has found some time. No, he's not. I think he's backed off. So a second down. Lance Skinner, who has joined a little bit late due to some issues with the game, as per usual. But he is out there on the lap in the Williams. His teammate Jesus is not set a lap time either. We know Jesus isn't the strongest in qualifying. I feel like I mention this every single time in Tier 3, but it's still a matter of fact, because the most of his races he has started outside the top 10. But in the majority of his races he's also finished inside the top 10, so definitely more focused on race pace, as you should be, because that's where the points are scored. But he also knows he needs to beat Alpha High Wall, who has just started his first flying lap as well. Permanent indeed. As Skinner then in that final sector flat out going to the left and down directly into a braking zone. From the right to the left again, and sharply to the inside, and this is flat out. Running the inside curve there as much as possible without cutting it, and across the line he will go for what will be a 27.0. Good enough to put him in P7 right now. What about Alpha High Wall? Makes his way out of Cobb's Corner. I actually quite enjoy this track. I didn't have a great time around the normal layout last week in Tier 1. Finished in P12, which is irrelevant of course, but certainly enjoyed this layout more. Not sure why, just like the nature of the track. In reverse it has a good flow to it. Though the tire wear around here is absolutely horrendous. And also something I struggle with. Definitely a 2-stop. Even with the 2-stop you get high tire wear. As Alpha High Wall goes to P2 with his first lap time. Great banker lap, 26.4. Ahead of Twoosh Terry, who is going to start his second flying lap in a few moments time. His Sunny Hayes Racing, I'm not quite sure. Haven't seen him around the paddock. You know, he might actually turn up at the end and step into one of the vehicles. Let's hope he doesn't crash it then. So Twoosh Derby is going to start his flying lap. Barney is on his out lap as well. Let's see if he's going to be able to make it into the 125s. I know for a fact Tier 2 had a really quick pole time. I think it was a 25.4, only 1/10 of a second slower than a Tier 1's pole time of 125.3. So Twoosh Derby is backed off after not going through too well through the first couple of corners. Let's focus our eyes then on our current pole sitter. He got himself a race win last week. Hasn't got a pole position yet. But he might be able to do that because he's still 3.5 tenths clear to anyone out there. Fighting aboard with the RB. Flicking his way through to one, sliding around a bit with the back end. Don't want to take that inside curve too much, or the backhand will step out on exit. But he has kept it nice and smoothly. Then through Stowe in reverse on the exit. Runs out a little bit too wide onto the gravel. And that is going to compromise his straight line speed all the way down the hanger straight. Now it's going to be difficult to improve, and he doesn't. 3 tenths down after the first sector. Harry though is improving almost by 0.2 of a second. Which will be enough to put him on the front row if he manages to pull this through throughout the rest of this lap. Going into the final sector, 3 tenths up now for the kick sour. It's actually way closer than I thought it would be towards Barney's time. He only needs to find a few hundredths of a second in this final sector, and he will be at the time of 126.1, which has been set by the RB a few moments ago. Let's see. Will he be able to beat that time? He crosses the line. Oh, and he misses out by almost 0.2 of a second in that final sector. Has lost quite a bit of time there. And at the moment has to settle for second place. As Barney pulls back into the pit lane. Arbon right behind him is not really improving through the middle sector, but does find some time in the final sector to go into the 126s for the first time this week. His teammate right behind, making his way through the final few corners. Is he going to be able to match what Arbon has just done? Not quite. He improves his time but not his position and stays in P14 as Frobby goes up to 12th place. Just behind Nexus, who was up on his time by 0.2 of a second through the middle sector. And he improves to P9. Just ahead there of Arbon. But a top 10 would be a good result then for the man who was just bought this game a few days ago. Currently sits 0.5 of a second behind his teammate. Michael, in the meantime, he is slotted in P5, just behind his teammate. Looking for a good result tonight, which would certainly help Haas in the championship. They're currently P5, have dropped behind McLaren after the win last week. 1 point is the difference between the two. And also 13 points ahead of both Ferrari and Aston Martin. Aston Martin are also looking quite good right now, P6 and 7. What about the Williams boys? Skinner is up by almost 0.3 of a second through the middle sector. If he maintains that in that final sector, he will be up to P9. Let's see, maybe even P8 if he finds some more time. It's a little bit wide there coming out of Klopp, and he pulls back into the pit lane. So not going to be an improvement then for Skinner. And that leaves only 3 drivers out on track. Blitz Hyper, Frobby and Nexus. And Blitz Hyper has just started his flying lap. Let's see what the Alpine can do. His teammate, Alpha Hype World Championship leader, is on a 26.4. Blitz Hyper, tier 5 driver. Let's see if it's going to be able to crack into the top 10. Already up though by 1/10 of a second through the first sector. We'll have to find a few more 10s to break into the top 10. But we know he is capable of being competitive in tier 3. We have seen it before this season. He took a surprise victory at Shanghai. Now coming out of Love Field. And back to the right. Really slidey on exit. And has found a few more 10s of a second. Now 4 10s. Which will put him around the time of Skinner in P11. Which would be just outside the top 10. But who knows if he finds a bit more time out of the final sector. Well, we will never know the answer, because he's going back to the pit lane. He knows he has 3 minutes to go in this session. So he probably feels like there's more time in that. And he's choosing to go back into the pit lane and go out for his final run. And try and find even more time. Barney, Harry, Tousteri and Balabotan already out on track for their final runs. Might have brought a bit more fuel in the tank in case they make a mistake on their first lap. They can recharge and try again. And they have the time to do so, 2.5 minutes to go. And Tousteri, he is going to be the first one to start his final flying lap here in qualifying. Can he put himself on the front row, the Haas driver? Looking way better through that first chicane. That's where he lost the most time on his previous attempt. Bit slidey there through Stowe, but I don't think he's lost too much time on exit. Let's see. He is up by 0.04 of a second. Already yes, starting to improve on this lap. And Megan Beckett in reverse. Certainly an experience. And then Cops corner. Doesn't take the risk of taking the inside curb there, as it can catch you out. Now into left field. Has to wait long there to put the throttle down, but he's up by 2.5 tenths through the middle sector. This could be a potential front row for Twoosterry. Just needs to nail this final sector. To the right and then to the left again. Gets a good exit. Will it be enough to beat Harry and put him on the front row? Twoosterry crosses line, and he does so by only a few thousandths of a second. But Twoosterry is on the front row, but Harry immediately beats him, and he misses out on pole position by 100th of a second towards Barney, who is still on a lap time as well. He's improving. Can he go to the 125s? Yes, he can. 125.891, and Barney has increased his advantage at the top. And so far is the only driver to put it in to the 125s. What a lap time for last week's race winner. Alpha Hype Wall has just started his flying lap. Blitz Hyper is the last one to do so in a moment of time. So now our focus will switch towards Michael, but he's not improving on his time. He's 3 tenths down, in fact, through the middle sector. So I don't think he's going to be able to improve on his P5 position. Right behind him is Balaboton. He's up by 2 tenths of a second. He might be able to dethrone the Haasman and potentially go into the second row and beat Alpha Hype Wall. Michael's the first one to catch the flag, stays in P5. Balaboton goes into P3 with a great final sector. Has found quite a bit of time there as Ozone next to cross the line in the Red Bull stays down in P14 as the McLaren of Lennons goes ahead of the Haas, and he is on the third row in P6. Next up is Nexus, but he's not improving and pulls back into the pit lane, and he will stay down in P9 for now. Skinner then has found almost 4 tenths of a second on this lap, which potentially can get him up to P8, maybe even ahead of Lennons and Michael if he gets a good final sector. But he loses out a little bit there, and he stays, and he goes up to P9. Aaron moves up to P5. What about Jesus? P9 inside the top 10 for now. Let's see if he's going to be able to maintain that. As Arbon, he is down at P12 with up by 3 tenths of a second. Frobby moves inside the top 10 as Arbon goes up to P7 with a good final lap, improves his lap time there and his position 1,000th of a second behind Alpha Hype Walls, but unable to improve. And he will start this race down in 6th position unless Blitz Hyper has got something to say about that. He improves only to P14 though. And that is it then for qualifying. Jesus has found himself inside the top 10 for which is quite unique in Tier 3. But Barney is on pole position with a 125.8, a quarter of a second ahead of Harry in the Kicksauber. Great lap there from Barney. Last week he won. This week he's on pole position, so will it be back-to-back for the RB driver? We'll find out in around 45 minutes time. But Harry will start on the front row in the Kicksauber. Balabotan, after his pole position last week, will have to start from P3 just ahead of Twoosterry on the second row. Aaron in the other Aston Martin in P5 just ahead of our championship leader Alpha Hype Wall. Great qualifying indeed, and now we get to prepare ourselves for the race. 26 laps it will be. Arbon starts in P7 ahead of Lennons at P8. Mike on the P9 ahead of Jesus inside the top 10. Frobby ahead of Skinner in P11 and 12. Nexus in P13. Blitz Hyper. P14. Ozon in P15. And Jaden rounds off the grid in P16 in his Ferrari. Now it's time to get ready for the main event. 26 laps of racing ahead of us around the Silverstone reverse layout. Definitely not want to be starting on the sauce because tire wear is incredibly high around here. It might be a forced two-stop for everyone unless You've got incredible tire management. I am not one of those because I definitely went for the 2-stop yesterday, medium hards, and even then experienced great tire wear on all my stints basically. So I do wonder if the majority of these drivers have picked the harder tire allocation, because that will be the way to go. But this race is going to put the drivers to the test then, not only for raw pace and racecraft, but also for tire management. Because yesterday in Tier 1, we saw a few punctures towards the end of the race for those who tried to go for the 1-stop. So 2-stop is definitely the safer way to go, even though this track has the longest pit lane and the longest pit loss out of any track on the calendar. The tire wear is just so excessive that you're almost forced to do a 2-stop around here. You'd say overtaking around this track can be quite difficult, and you would be right, because well, the normal overtaking opportunities around Silverstone, in reverse, all the braking zones are basically after a very quick right-hander or a quick left-hander, which makes it very dangerous to go wheel to wheel through that, but it's not impossible, because Silverstone is quite a wide track. But for example, that final chicane in reverse, it's got the final corner leading up to it, which you don't want to go side by side through, because it will end in tears, unless on the opening lap, of course. We will see some action going into that chicane. Copse corner, of course, is a no-go. It always has been, and the real overtaking opportunity in the reverse track is going into Loffield. After the straight between Copse corner and Loffield, there is a slight kink to the left, but you can go wheel to wheel through that, and then potentially send one up the inside to go around the outside. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how these drivers are going to tackle this track. And what can our championship leader do? Alpha Hype Wall starting down in P6. We know we definitely will have the pace of the front runners. And he is starting ahead of his rivals once again. But here we go then. It's time for Silverstone in reverse. Barney is on pole position with Harry alongside. And the lights are out, and we're on the way for the British Grand Prix. Barney leads ahead of Balaboton, has a great start, and he was already trying to go round the outside there of Harry, and he does so as the other Aston Martin goes off track. More cars in the background, going wide on the entry of turn 1, but Balaboton has already got a position as he got ahead of Harry in the background. Twush Terry fights it out with Alpha Hype Wall, bit of a gap already towards the top 3, and he stays ahead of the Alpine for now. He's gained a position of the start ahead of Aaron in P6, and it's Arwan at 7 ahead of Lennons in the McLaren, trying to go alongside the Red Bull already, but you don't want to go overtaking in towards Meggins and Beckett, but the McLaren driver is going to do it regardless. He goes around the outside, and Twush there is being put off into the gravel there as he went wheel to wheel with the Alpine of Alpha Hype Wall. Contact between the two, and Twush Terry has been sent spinning around. Halfway down the opening lap, down to P16 he goes, as his teammate fights it out with Jesus in P9 is already in the position. And now Blitz Hyper trying to get past the Haas as well as we go into Luffield, but Michael sends it along around the outside and is able to maintain his position as he will have the inside line for the next turn and stays ahead of Blitz Hyper and Skinner then in P12. But at the front it is Barney who has maintained his lead by 0.4 of a second towards Balaboton. It's already Harry with a bit of a gap behind. in the kick Sauber, but he is on the harder compound tire, so it's to be expected in the opening few laps. 1 second is the difference between himself and the Aston Martin. Then right behind him is Alpha Hype Wall, who at that moment with Twisteri halfway down the opening lap. Arbon, as a result of that, is back inside the top 5 with Lennons in P6 and Arbon in 7th place. Twisteri down in P16. He as well started on the hard along with Jaden in P15 in the Ferrari. And Jesus and Nexus doing that as well in the Williams and Sauber respectively. DRS down the hangar straight. And there's also a DRS zone after Cobb's corner, as it's Arbon going very wide there through Maggots and Beckett's, which almost allowed Nexus to have a go alongside him. But the Ripple with a better exit stays ahead of the Sauber for now. But after Cobb's corner, this has actually become a DRS zone, as Arbon knocks down that DRS board, but that creates an extra overtaking opportunity. Nexus having a look up the inside, but cannot quite put it off just yet. As Skinner has got ahead of Blitz Hyper. The Williams driver's up to P11. While Blitz Hyper struggling for grip right now. He's got Froby and Ozone for company right behind. As Nexus is going to get ahead of Arbon as well. And the Sauber is up to P7. And Barney finds himself with a comfortable lead after the second lap. Over 1 second towards Balabotan. But he is trying to close the gap back down to under a second to the RB driver. Harry already close behind on his hards. The mediums really don't last that long around here. The tire wear is around 8 to 10% per lap. So you don't have much of an advantage after 3, 4, 5 laps of racing. Olson gets ahead of Froby, now in P13. Already a bit of a gap forming between Nexus and Lennons. Nexus and Lennons, the gap is almost 2.5 seconds. But Aaron also struggling to stay within DRS range of Alpha Hype Wall. And the top 4 in a DRS train right now, as Barney has lost quite a bit of time. Another position lost there for Arbon as Jesus gets ahead. And Jesus now up to P8. In his charge through the field. Always excited to watch. Next target will be Nexus, who is on the hard as well. But you can't push these tries too much. Big lock up there from Nexus. Because you want to take these stars for quite a bit of laps, especially if you want to go for the one stop. You have to take it past the halfway point. And even if you go for the two stop, you have to take it for more than 10 laps. Skinner now inside the top 10. Just found the way past Michael. Meanwhile, Barney now once again has got a lead of over 1 second. And Harry is getting close to the back of Balabotan, who might already be starting to suffer with tire wear. And the Sauber driver might have a real go there at the exit of Cobb's corner. When he will have the DRS as the Aston Martin runs slightly wide. The better exit is there for Harry. He goes to the inside. Not quite, has the DRS, but Balabotan defends the inside line, but not by too much. And now Harry is having a go up the inside. Bit of contact between the two, and Harry almost going into the grass there. Fighting it out with Balabotan. He's picked up a 3-second time penalty. I'm not sure why the message didn't pop on the screen, but Harry now with a 3-second time penalty. Because of that moment, I'm sure he will be able to get that removed. Now he sends one up the inside there. Contact once again between the two. Elbows out. And Balabotan still stays ahead. Now Harry is going to try and go for the switchback. But he doesn't quite get the exit right. And you don't want to go side by side going to the final corner. But losing a lot of time now. The gap's over 2 seconds towards Barney. And it is a 3-second time penalty then for Harry there. He's going to have DRS though on the exit of Stowe. So let's see if he's going to be able to pull it off there. But looks like Balaboton does have a good exit, and the gap's around half a second. As we make our way down the hangar straight, Alpha High Ball following closely behind. 6/10 in the Alpine. And then it's Arman at 1.2 with Lennons trailing him. Nexus still ahead of Jesus, but the gap's only 0.4 of a second. Harry once again going up the inside of the Aston Martin, and this time he does get the position and he's ahead now of Balaboton. He's got the tire advantage as well and is able to stay in front. Now the gap is 2.5 seconds towards Barney as Alpha High Ball had half a look at the inside of Balaboton but stays behind for now. This train then behind him, Jesus wanting to go up the inside. But it's not easy to do so, but Nexus runs off track there on the braking zone. It's the grass and Jesus goes through and so does Arbon, but Nexus still having to go up the inside. Arbon though will have the better exit, as you would think, but Nexus still alongside as Barney pulls into the pit lane from the race lead on the end of lap 6, or going on to lap 6, only 5 laps of racing before Barney has to pull into the pit lane, but Arbon pulls ahead there of Nexus. He made a bit of a mistake there in the braking zone, going into the village section. Ran out slightly wide on entry at the braking zone, and he's lost out 2 positions in the process. Barney the only driver to pull into the pit lane so far. Only 5 laps on mediums, but he will come out in clean air. So now Harry is in the lead of this race, with Balaboton and Alpha High Ball close behind, and Arbon, he's closed the gap to under a second, and he's brought Lennons with him. So the top 5 in a DRS train. Michael is going to get ahead of Skinner, back ahead of Skinner, and now inside the top 10 in P9. Twooch Derry on his charge back through the field finds himself in P13. He's already cleared both Robbie and Jaden. He's now looking to find a way past Ozan. Who else is going to pull into the pit lane? Won't be Harry, he's on the hards, but Balaboton does pull into the pit lane in the Aston Martin. Alpha High Ball continues on, so does Balaboton's teammate Arbon. And Lennons now as well into the pit lane. Arbon in the Red Bull. And Ozan, so it's going to be a double stack for Red Bull, which is going to lose both of them a lot of time. Well, not Arbon, but Ozan for sure will lose a lot of time with that. Also both McLarens into the pit lane. So a double stack for both Red Bull and McLaren. Barney will be ahead of all of them with relative ease, as the undercut is quite powerful around here. And look at the gap that he's got towards Balaboton as he comes out of the pit lane. It is around 5 seconds. Balaboton onto another set of mediums though. So he's going for a medium hard. Barney is onto the hard tires from the mediums. But definitely we will be doing a 2-stop as well. And it's going to be tricky with tire wear. Given the fact he's only been able to do 5 laps on those mediums. He will be struggling towards the end of the race. Harry now 1.7 seconds ahead of Alpha Hype Wall, who will be putting into the pit lane quite soon, I can imagine. Just look at the state of that front right tire. Look at the graining there as he pulls now into the pit lane. And so does Arbon closely behind. None of the drivers have picked up a 10-second time penalty yet for speeding. At least, well, Ozan has, and now Michael has. I'm not getting the notifications for some reason. I usually pausing the game and unpausing it works, but not right now. I'll have to keep an eye on that throughout this race. But unfortunate then for both Michael and Ozan. As all of the drivers putting on a set of hards, coming out behind Balaboton. behind Lennon's potentially as well, although where's Alpha Hypol on the exit? There he is. But he is behind the McLaren driver and will be coming out in P10, just behind Lennon's. 4 tenths. Harry, Jesus and Nexus all started on the hards. Skinner is still out there on those mediums. And Twisteri and Jaden both starting on the hards as well. Staying out on lap 8 of this race. Blitz Hyper tries to get past Ozan. They go wheel to Kop's corner, but there's contact between the two. Ozan spins around as he hits the rear right tire there of Blitz Hyper, who has been sent off track as well, losing a lot of positions, a lot of time down in P15. But Ozan there making contact with the Alpine, and he has sent himself towards the back as well, losing a lot of time. Unfortunate moment there, but you could see that was coming. Going wheel to wheel through Kop's corner was never going to work. And in this case, it hasn't. Meanwhile, Nexus is into the pit lane from the hards after only 8 laps of racing. And Skinner, of course, who started on the mediums, going for a second set of mediums. Blitz Hyper and incidents. Well, I'm not too sure about this one. Maybe something led up to that incident, but I thought it was a pretty optimistic move there from Ozan to send it up the inside. After looked at back after race, probably will both have a different view on that. As Skinner's got front wing damage, I think. I think his right end plate is missing as Ozan has retired out on track, which has caused a safety car. Of course, what you don't want to see here, but that's the confirmation. Skinner does have has a bit of front wing damage, but a safety car has been deployed, which is going to throw around everything in this race. Also going to make the 2-stop a lot more easier for everyone. Harry, no surprise, putting it to the pit lane from his hards. Jesus will be as well in the Williams, and so too is Terry and Jaden, who have stayed out for these 8 laps so far. I don't know what happened to Ozan there, if he crashed out on his own or crashed out of frustration, but top 4 putting into the pit lane. Harry is going to go onto a set of mediums, and so will Jesus. As Barney re-inherits the race lead. He's got the older stars of the field though, 4 laps old hards. As Balabotan will come out in second place, or will he? Side by side there with Harry on exit, but I think the Aston Martin is still just ahead. Yes, he is. And so Harry concedes the position. Balabotan in P2 now, Harry in P3, but this safety car has certainly helped him in his strategy. Len's now in P4 out of Alpha Hypol in P5, and look at where Jesus is, P6. The man who started down in P10, and he's on a fresh set of mediums. Albon down in 7th now, Albon in 8th. And the 2 Haas drivers running out the top 10. Who's there inside the top 10 after his earlier spin on the opening lap. Looking to get back into this race. Nexus, Blitz Hyper and Skinner going for another pit stop. Skinner to fix his front wing probably, if they have done so. Because there is a glitch where if your only end plate is missing, they won't replace it automatically, and it hasn't. They haven't replaced his front wing, so he's sent out on track still without a missing end plate, but on a brand new set of hards. Safety car conditions to neutralize this race, but Barney is still out in front, but his gap has been reduced to absolutely nothing. So all the good work he's done so far in this race has become undone, which is not great news for him and the V-Carb team. but we know he's got the pace, and this safety car certainly helps him with his tire wear issues. Have to wait till Nexus, Blitz, Harper and Skinner close the gap, but I think they will be able to do that, as the Alpine runs slightly wide there onto the grass. But potentially we'll see the safety car going back into the pit lane at the end of lap 11, meaning we'll have 15 laps remaining. Probably will still see everyone go for another pit stop, but the chances of them getting a puncture certainly have been reduced due to these 2 laps under safety car conditions. Also will allow these drivers to push a little bit more, so they can ask a little bit more of their stars. So might see for an interesting restart to this race. But everyone is now bunched up behind the safety car. Desperately weaving to warm up the tires, but don't want to weave too much, because it also will wear out your tires, which is the last thing you need around a track like this, where tire wear is so high. Harry, the only driver so far with a 3-second time penalty to track limits, and Michael with that 10-second time penalty for speeding going into the pit lane. But safety cars going back in this lap. I'm not getting any notifications, which is quite annoying, but the green flag is waving, so that indicates that we're going back to racing at the end of this lap. Barney will lead the way, like he did on the opening lap, where he started from pole position. Slowing down and aiming for a good restart at the exit here. Bit of a moment there, a bit of a tank slapper, and he's waiting still. Slowing down on exit. Waiting, and here we go then. It is green flag racing again as we go on to lap 12, and Barney leads by 0.2 of a second ahead of Alaboton. He's on the mediums. And so is Harry close behind, who has just made a pit stop under safety car conditions. Looking to pounce immediately. Lennon's following closely in P4 in the Alpine, in the McLaren, with the Alpine of Alpha Wolf close behind, looking to find a way past as soon as possible. The other Alpine gets past Nexus for P13. As the 2 Haas drivers swap around, Tour Sterry up to P9 now. In the background we go wheel to wheel almost there into Maggots and Beckett. But Nexus remains now in front of Blitz Hyper in P14, Skinner in P15, still with that front wing damage, unfortunately, which can have to be a very difficult second half of this race. Harry once again close to the back, but he switches to the inside there into the braking zone of Lovefield to Saber on the inside, the Aston Martin on the outside, but doesn't have the grip to maintain that position, and Harry is up to P2 with a great move there. And Alpha Hypol looking to find a way past Alpha Hypol, tries to go around the outside, but the McLaren driver shuts the door, but still the Alpine has got his nose in. But the outside is not the way to take on this turn, but he's going to try around the outside regardless. McLaren on the inside, Alpha Hypol has the inside line for the next turn. That's a beautiful move from our championship leader, and Alpha Hypol is up to P4. Great stuff there as he gets ahead of Lennon's, with Jesus in P6 as Twitch Terry's on the charge. He's got ahead now of Arbon and is chasing after Arbon in P7. DRS has been enabled. Now we're going on to lap 13. As the field is closely matched there, as Jesus now on the exit tries to find a way past Lennon's. He's going to have to go the long way around the outside of Stowe. Does he have the grip to do so? Doesn't quite get the space there as Lennon's shuts the door once again. And Jesus will have to stay in P6 for now. He knows he has to take the advantage on these laps when the medium tire still has the advantage over the hards. But at the moment he has to stay behind Lennon's. Harry has to go the long way around the outside into the braking zone very late on the brakes, and Barney has got no response to the Kick Sauber, who charges into the lead of this race. Harry now up to P1, ahead of Barney. He's on 7 lap, all hards of course, but 2 laps on those were under safety car conditions. But he has got the most worn out tires in this field right now. And now it's going to be put under pressure there by Balaboto. Nexus gets ahead of Jaden. And there is contact in the background. That is Michael and Nexus making contact. And the Haas driver has been spun around. And Nexus was off track as well. And he's got damage to his front wing. Didn't quite see what happened between the two. But very unlucky there. Nexus has to pull into the pit lane, of course, with that front wing damage. As Michael continues on. So now it's a kick sour sandwich. Harry in the lead, his teammate in last place. Barney is struggling to stay within 1 second of the kick sour. Does he have the DRS? Not quite sure what has happened to Frobby. He's gone off on the exit of the chicane. And he is now down to P14 as Twitch Terry has got ahead of Aaron. And his next target is going to be Jesus on the mediums. Great comeback drive so far from Twitch Terry. Almost back to where he started in this race. After he had the collision with Alpha Hype Wall on the opening lap. Dropped all the way down to P16. Now he is fighting his way back as that is Balabotan going slightly wide and Alpha Hype Wall slips underneath. We'll have the outside line for the next turn. There's contact between the two of them, but Alpha Hype Wall keeps it around the outside and now he's up into a podium position. Balabotan drops down to P4. Very tight midfield fight here. Jesus once again close to the back of the McLaren, but he's also got the Haas driver right behind him as Balabotan pulls into the pit lane after 7 laps on the mediums. At the end of lap 15, the Aston Martin is going to put on a brand set of hards to try and make it to the end of this race, which is easier said than done because he's going to have to do 11 laps on those hards. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but around this track, it sure is. Which has now left a gap between Alpha Hype Wall and Lennons of 1.5 seconds. So Jesus will try to overtake potentially at the exit of Cobb's Corner. Twitch Terry also close to the Williams driver. Michael into the pit lane again. As that is going off track there, Lennon's way off into the grass as Twitch Terry also runs slightly wide there, but that has allowed Jesus to go through. As Lennon's completely understeered off track there. Now he's lost 2 positions down to P6. Jesus now ahead, he's into P4. Ahead of Twitch Terry, but a bit of a mistake there by Lennon's. As he overestimated or underestimated the lack of grip at this stage of this race after 8 laps on those hards. Luckily for him there's no wall there close on the exit and he had the runoff. As race leader Barney pulls into the pit lane again. After only 9 laps of racing, he is going to have to do 10 on this next stint. And I hope for him that he's got a set of hards waiting for him rather than a set of mediums. Yes, he does. So another set of hards to take him to the end of this race. Where is he going to come out compared to Balabotan though, who dropped down to P4 or P5 for a moment. But the undercut is very powerful around here. But I think Barney will still stay ahead of the Aston Martin, yes he will, by quite a few seconds. 1.92 seconds is the gap between the two of them. Harry in the lead of this race, searching still for his first victory in Tier 3. But we know that he's got a 3-second time penalty, but we also know that he might be able to remove a warning. But that does mean that he has to race the entirety of this race without getting another warning, which will be quite tricky. Twitch Terry also with a 3-second time penalty. Harry continues on. Alpha High Wall does not. He's putting into the pit lane after only 8 laps on these hards. Lennons and Arbon both into the pit lane as well after the end of lap 16. Barney and Balabotan still separated by 2 seconds. Will be our race leaders when everyone else pulls into the pit lane. I think Balabotan just set the fastest lap of the race. Looking at the track map. And will be ahead of Alpha High Wall on exit, although it will be quite close because the pit exit is a little bit quicker on straight line speed, but still, the Aston Martin remains ahead of the Alpine. Harry's got 2 third places this season, but still hasn't finished inside the top 2. And still looking for his first victory. I think he will be going into the pit lane at the end of this lap. Those mediums look quite finished after 7 laps. Yes, he will be. Our race leader pulls into the pit lane at the end of lap 17. For 9 laps. On those hards. Jesus is still continuing on these mediums, and now Twuster, who was last at the end of the opening lap, now leads the field going on to lap 18. But he still has to make a pit stop. And where is Harry going to come out compared to the likes of Barney, Balabotan and Alpha High Wall? Alpha High Wall is close to the back of the Aston Martin. Barney will be ahead of the Sauber, but what about the Aston Martin and the Alpine? Because now the Sauber can get up to speed. It's going to be very, very tight on exit. Will he be wheel to wheel with the Aston Martin just ahead of the Aston Martin? Harry is now in P2. Virtually on track. Virtually, not on track. He's in P8. But virtually he's in a second place, chasing Barney by 2 seconds. Balabotan under pressure from Alpha High Wall. The gap is 2 tenths and he's going to send one on the inside, going into left field contact between the two as Alpha High Wall runs out slightly deep and makes contact with Balabotan, who is going to stay ahead. As the Alpine is not able to complete that move. Optimistic sent to the inside, but it hasn't worked out for him. Not yet, at least. As towards there now, Jesus, Aaron and Jaden all into the pit lane for their final pit stop. Which has now left Blitz Hyper in the lead of this race, ahead of Skinner. Harry still 2 seconds behind Barney, but he knows he's got a 2-lap tire advantage compared to the Albi driver. So he will be quicker at the end of the race. Balabotan, he's been dropped out of the DRS range towards the Sauber. So Alpha High Wall will be looking to get past him. As towards Harry going wheel to wheel there with Arbon into Maggots and Beckett's. And the Haas driver is ahead of the Red Bull, and he's on the mediums. He is going to have to do 8 laps on these mediums. He's going to have to do some tire saving towards the end to not get into puncture territory. Looks like Alpha High Wall has finally found a way past Balabotan, but he's trying to go back up the inside of the Alpine, but he knows that going into that right-hander is a mistake as they make contact under braking. Balabotan runs into the back of Alpha High Wall, but no damage done. The Alpha High Wall is now in a virtual P3. Blitz Hyper and Skinner still continuing on with 7 laps to go. Hoping for another safety car as Michael has gone for a spin out of, well, I'm not sure what turn it is, but out of the village section. And Michael really not having a great time here out at the Silverstone reverse layout. Last week he finished in P11, just outside the top 10. This week he will be in P14, very likely. Unless something dramatic happens ahead of him. Blitz, Hyper and Skinner still going strong. Skinner still with that front wing damage. He is keeping up with the Alpine. The gap towards Barney is rapidly decreasing though. Now 6.5 seconds. And they're both continuing on for final 6 laps. Are they going to try and make it to the end on these tires? Well, given the state of that front rear tire, I really don't think they'll be able to make that work. But they also know that if they pit, they will be outside the points, down in probably P12, P13 anyway. So why not give it a try? And aim for more points as Barney and Harry now separated by 1.1 seconds. And Harry is closing that gap. Terry close to the back of Lennons as Arbon gets ahead of Jesus, or was Jesus trying to get ahead of Arbon, the Williams driver, with a 2-lap tire advantage. Currently down in P10, which is where he started. So, so far not the greatest of comeback drives for Jesus, like we usually know from him. Last week he came from P16 to P4, but he seems to be struggling a little bit more around this layout. Terry ahead of Lennons and now in P7, and will be chasing after Balabotan. As the top 2 is still going strong, but the gap has been well decreased by 3 seconds towards Barney. It's now 3.1. So they're basically 3 seconds a lap quicker, which is pretty insane, but 5 laps to go. Both Blitz, Hyper and Skinner in ultra power tire saving mode. Trying to bring some points home, and Skinner is now going to take the lead off this race. He gets past Blitz Hyper, who lets him through. Not going to fight him with this tire wear. Now the Williams driver is ahead of the Alpine. But Barney already 1.3 seconds behind. So look at the immense lifting that Blitz Hyper has to do to hold on to these tires. The good thing for them is that there is a bit of a gap between Alpha Highball and Harry, around 4.6 seconds. So after Harry and Barney get past us, that is some interesting defensive driving by Blitz Hyper, who eventually has to let both of them through. But there was contact between the two, and now Harry is going to try and go around the outside of Barney. But the RB driver is not going to allow that. So yellow flags out there again for Frobby, but Harry now round the outside of the RB is going to have the better exit, and Harry gets ahead of Barney as he comes out of the corner. The Kick Sauber is ahead of the RB, but a bit of a controversial moment there between Blitz Hyper and Harry, as he was almost putting the RB into the grass on the Wellington straight. But Harry now, once he clears Skinner, will be in a leading position. And of course we don't know if he's going to be able to get that 3-second time penalty removed, which still is 3 seconds, but if he is, then it might be a legitimate fight for the race lead here. But that of course is something we only know after the race. Close to the back of Skinner, but you don't want to fight going into Cobb's corner. You really can't. With the understeer, look at the advantage that Barney has on the back of Harry, who is going to try and get past Skinner into the braking zone of Lovefield. The Williams driver has got nothing against the Sauber. But the good thing for Harry is there is a car between himself and Barney. He's going to have to use that advantage as much as he can. And he does. Barney does get past eventually, but what is the gap between the two? It's 1.0 seconds. It's going to be absolutely key for Harry to now build a gap of over a second. And it's now 1.1. It's very, very close between these two. Skinner now in P3 ahead of Alpha High Walls. Already got past Blitz Hyper, of course. He won't fight his teammate in this race. Still continuing on. There's 3 laps remaining in this race. Barney is within 1 second again. He is not done yet with this fight for the race lead. Alpha High Ball is going to get past Skinner as well with relative ease, and he's now in a podium position again. Our championship leader will be extending his lead once more, as his closest rival from Jesus is down in P10. Oh, and Skinner looks like he's got a front wide puncture. Yes, he has. He is not making it to the end on these stars, and he will be overtaken by both Blitz Hyper there and now Twisteri, who realized that the Williams driver's got no grip, and fully off track goes the Williams of Skinner, and all his good work has become undone, and he will drop outside the points as his teammate goes past. More fighting ahead. Twisteri now ahead of Blitz Hyper as we go wheel to wheel in the background. That is Balaboton at Lennons fighting it out on the exit. Lennons is going to have the inside line as Blitz Hyper is going to get out of the way there as well. Behind Arbon. He must be very close to a puncture as well. But look at this fight then for P4. Twisteri is currently in that position, though with a 3-second time penalty. And he will be struggling on these mediums. So Blitz Hyper now drops down to P10. Skinner, of course, into the pit lane with his puncture. And we're on the penultimate lap of this race. Harry leads by 9/10 of a second towards Barney. Then Alpha Ball in a comfortable P3 position. Headed towards Terry Balaboton, Dennons and Arbon, who's under massive pressure from Jesus. Trying to find a way past, but cannot quite find a way past, and he still looking at the back of this Red Bull. The gap is 3/10 of a second though, down to 2/10. But still can't find a way past. There was yellow flags, and it's because of Jaden, who has now also picked up a puncture on the front right after only 6 laps, not even on the mediums. The Ferrari driver spins coming out of Cobb's corner as he hits the grass on the exit and does a nice pirouette to get back to the direction he wants to face. But also a puncture on the front right there for the Ferrari driver, which is going to allow Skinner to get back up into P13. We're on the final lap of this race. Harry leads out of Barney by 6/10 of a second. Harry does have a 2-lap tire advantage, but Barney seems to hold on to his tires for now. Yeah, I'll check the race director at the end. Potentially, because we do know that Harry had that moment earlier on where he picked up a penalty where he really shouldn't. But look at Barney, look how close he is to the back of the kick Sauber. He's going to have to go long around the outside into Lovefield. The Sauber's on the inside. He's going to have to battle that bit of contact between the two. Barney now is going to have the inside line for the next one. More contact between the two, and Barney gets almost spun around there. Fighting it out with Harry, who stays ahead with the elbows out. And I'm sure Barney's going to have something to say about that. But Harry remains in the lead of this race. And with only 2 corners to go, I don't think there's anything Barney can do to go for his second victory in a row. Harry comes out of the final corner for the first time ever. He's going to cross the finish line first, and Harry wins the British Grand Prix. But Barney, with not a time penalty, he is going to be declared the official race winner. Harry is classified in second place. We will only know if that is the true position after this race, if he is going to be able to remove that time penalty. But Barney wins out of Harry. Alpha Hype Wall once again extends his championship lead with another strong podium finish. Twisteri holds on to P4 despite a 3-second time penalty. Arbon in P5 with Jesus in 6th. Not sure what happened there at the end in this fight, with the 2 Aston Martins in 7th and 8th. Arbon ahead of Balabotan, who picked up a puncture as well on the front right, it seems. So that's why he has dropped down the order. Lennon's in P9, which I think he's got a puncture as well in the McLaren. And Blitz Hyper in the end, wow, finishes in P10 with the 2-stop, 17 laps on the hards. Very impressive stuff. Robbie in P11. Michael picks up the final point ahead of Skinner and Nexus, who crosses the line with a puncture on the front pipe. But that's the end then of this race. Barney goes for his second consecutive victory as he beats Harry on penalties. But that's the end then of a very entertaining British Grand Prix around the reverse layout. It does seem like Harry might be able to get his penalty removed, so we'll see about that after this race. But that is our race results then. Barney getting the fastest lap and the most overtakes. I'll have to get the race results in, and then I'll take a look at the race director if I do have the time. Fastest lap race as well for Barney, so he picks up a maximum amount of points, unless of course Harry is able to get his penalty removed. Just in time there, but what a race that was, and what a fight in the end between Barney and Harry. Great race in the end. Another great result for Alpha Eyeball, with his rival down, I think it was in P6, gains a few more points in the championship. It is getting closer to that championship trophy. However, there is still 5 rounds remaining this season. And next week we will return for the Belgian Grand Prix at Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, and it's going to be a sprint race included as well. So more points on the cards. After that, we will have Qatar, Hungary, Suzuka, mystery race with a sprint race, and Zandvoort. Actually 6 races remaining, including 2 sprint races. So still, of course, a lot of points available, and anything can happen in the championship. But that was it from me tonight, though. Hope you all enjoyed, and thank you everyone who has tuned into the stream. Tomorrow in the afternoon I will upload the highlights of this race. Be sure to check that out as well. But thank you all for watching. Next week I'll be back for the Belgian Grand Prix. But that's it from me tonight. See you all next time. Goodbye.